Hello, and welcome to, I think this is season 3 of Coffee in the Library. Today, in our pilot episode, we are going to be remembering the previous host, Mwansa Mbewe, and also we'll be trying to understand of something what God expects us, or how God expects us to deal with the loss of a loved one. With me, I have 4 guests, and I would ask them to introduce themselves. Just your name and what relationship you had with Mwansa. Just the kind of relationship you had with him. We can get into the details a little later.
All right. My name is Njekwa Sitali. Mwansa was my friend. I think that's the most basic way to explain it.
Okay.
My name is Ramson Mutambo, and Mwansa was my discipler and friend.
My name is Conrad Mbewe, and Mwansa was my son.
Hi, my name is Jessie Himunyanga, and Mwansa was my friend.
Yeah. My name is Tlamu Filakati, by the way. I realized I began with that. Yeah, Mwansa was my friend. There's a funny story behind Mwansa and I's friendship. Yeah. Yeah. So what happened was when I had just, I think I was just about to leave high school. I had just left high school. Discipleship had become all the rage at KVC around 2016, 2017. So I go to Mwansa and I say, can you disciple me? And he says, look, I'm looking at the man who I'm discipling. It's just not time. But I can be your friend. And yeah, here we are. Here we are almost 10 years later. Okay, so the first question that I want us to answer is, what is the thing you remember Mwansa for the most? And if there's a memory that's attached to that, you could share it as well. Anyone can go first. What do you remember him for the most?
Okay. I think for me, I remember Mwansa the most for reading absolutely anywhere. Like I don't know. He just read anywhere. And the first thought that came to mind was we went to the CABU conference. And that conference is packed. It's like every hour we have a preacher and we have like 5 minutes just for the transition, And in between those 5 minutes, he'll just take out, immediately the preacher is done, he'll take out a book and he'll start reading, and we're having a conversation and he's reading. And I just couldn't get it. Like, what are you, I felt like, like I'm not part of, his world in that moment. But no, he gave me all the attention. He gave his book the attention. And yeah, so that's for me.
Okay.
I think for me, it was when Mwansa started to learn how to ride a motorcycle. And he was telling me how his friend was teaching him. And when I began to see it at church, there was a popular song. I'm not too sure on the year, but it was going like, "Holla, we them boys." So when I would see Mwansa, would be like, "Holla, holla, we them boys." Again, we would laugh, we'd chuckle together. And yeah, that's one thing which I always remember. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, I don't think this is what I remember him for the most, but I think it was significant. So growing up at KBC, Mwansa and I recognized that at some point, when people were hitting the transition between, I'm a child and now I'm a man, they would begin to dress smartly. So once you begin to dress smartly, it shows, I'm now crossing over to being a man. So Mwansa and I said to each other, let's not do that. Everyone is dressing smart around here. Let's not do it. So we started initially dressing smart. We had that conversation and then we stopped afterwards. So if you noticed, if you would look and see Mwansa and I on Sundays, wouldn't be just like everyone else. Wouldn't be in ties and suits and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, for me, I would like to pull out one of the earliest memories that I have of him. And it was when Mrs. Tina Nyirenda came to visit us. And Mwansa by then was probably a year and a half at the most. And so she picked him up, put him on her back, and at a certain point, she then brought him to the front and then talked to him. Now, she was anticipating, like any baby at that age has not begun to talk. To her utter shock, Mwansa responded and actually talked to her. She almost dropped. Yeah, so he began talking very early compared to his siblings. Although he took long to start walking. We had to use all kinds of tricks to get him to actually start walking. And often when he's standing and you start using sweets or something to get him over, he would put on this sly smile and get onto all fours. It's like, I'm winning. Yeah, but talking, yes, he began very early. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing
Makes
that.
sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
My wife likes to say he used to smile as if he knew something you didn't.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things I remember the most about our interactions was he hated what he called nothing words or nothing conversation. And what he meant by that is someone could speak an entire paragraph without ever actually saying anything. So, for example, you ask someone, how are you doing? No, I'm okay. No, something happened at the office. And by the end of 5 minutes, you know completely nothing about what they were saying. So I remember when we would be talking and maybe I'm complaining about a girl or something, he would smile. He would keep smiling until I'll realize I haven't said anything. So no. Go back. Yeah, but that's something what our relationship looked like. So that's what I want to talk about next. What did your relationships with him look like?
Yeah, maybe I could begin there because mine went through phases, obviously. Initially, of course, he was primarily just a child in the home. The second among three before we brought in the other adopted ones. But by the time that he left us, like all my other children, he had become a friend, a confidant, somebody that would even challenge me about some of the views that I had concerning life and ministry and so on. He wasn't just, for instance, my student in the university, but he was also my working colleague. So we were workmates at the African Christian University. So I would say yes, by the time he left us, I was not thinking about him as my child as much as my friend and colleague in ministry. Yeah.
I think I would say my relationship with him went in phases as well. When we were younger, I guess because of our parents who were very, very close, would spend Saturdays together right here at church. I don't think there was a wall, so playing in the rocks that are behind the church. I don't know how our parents never found out that we were doing that, but we were. So that was the first part of our relationship. The middle part of our relationship looked like partnering together in ministry and really in the media ministry. So we spent a lot of time working together in the media ministry. An example of that is I was the chairman 1 year, and the next year Mwansa took over as the chairman. And so, that was our relationship. He was a guy I trusted because we served so long together in ministry. And then towards the last part of his life, we became very close friends again. So our families were very close. We were together studying in the master's program. And along the way, we were having a discussion. It happened very simply because we trusted each other. We're having a discussion with our families, and he said, you know what, I'm going to New Kasama State Lodge. Whenever I do that, let's go together. So I said to him, I've been thinking about that same area actually. And that's where the conversation ended. A few months later, we talked about it again. And I said to him, you know what, I don't know why I was taking long to think about this. This was a yes, right when you said it. So that's what the last part of our relationship looked like. Very close friends planning to plant a church together.
For me, Mwansa and I started talking or relating just after I finished university. That was in 2022. I came back, and I think just after I got back, I was like, hey, how are you? You okay? You're back now? I'm all right. Okay. The usual catch up. And I think later on, he was like, okay, we can, if you're okay with it, we can do discipleship together. So the relationship began in that sense. But as time went on, I was opening myself up to him, and I would assume he was to me.
Yeah.
So for me, we were friends, we were very close. But with Mwansa, sometimes you can think like, am I very really friends, you know? Or is it just me, you know? But yeah, for me, we were very close, you know? He was a very good friend of mine, yeah. So that's it.
Oh, interesting. I met Mwansa in 2016. I just come back from Namibia doing school, and I came back to KBC. So I met him at YP, and to today I still think he's the one that made me famous. Because he was always like, Jesse Jones, hey, have you met Jesse Jones? You know, everyone was just like, Jesse Jones. Yeah, so I met a lot of my friends at KBC through Mwansa. But our relationship was a lot of, pushing each other, challenging each other a lot. I remember one time I was visiting media. They were at the back at that time. And there were just guys in there, and, they're all just laughing at her. And I'm just like, it's just guys in here. It's like, yeah, Jesse, this is a boys' club. But you'll fit right in, And from there, it was always just about that, Yeah, it's a boys' club, but you can still do it. Like, you always challenge me. And yeah, a lot of things that we did, like starting the men's and the women's diet. So it was a lot of challenging each other and provoking, no, you're slacking, no, you're what? Yeah, so it was like that.
Yeah, I think for me, like Joko, I think our relationship went through stages. When I was younger, it was just, there was that guy around the church premises who's weird. I would always look at him. I think I sit somewhere in the middle of the church, and I would see him walking to where the projector was, and I would think to myself, one day that guy will be someone's husband.
Shame.
Poor woman. Yeah, so there was that weird one, and then there was the that big conference. I remember the conference when I became a Christian. I remember interacting with him from a distance. He was sitting at the back with one of the guys at CBU, and he was coordinating the hymns from the last bench. So the song in front would say, what song are we singing? And then Paul sort of began saying things, then he would do this. And then, we're now at hymn number 2. That was fun. And then towards after high school, it was more relationships. But by the time I was finishing my university, he basically just opened up his life to me. So he would, when he's going to scout land somewhere, and say, are you free this weekend? Let's go. Nothing in particular. Or he would send me podcasts and say, I think this is interesting. Listen to it, let me know what you think about it. So it just became, he was my sounding board. But I think the older we went into the friendship, the more he just began sharing it, getting my thoughts, giving his thoughts. It just became an ordinary friendship. And I think that's something that's common with everyone, not just here, but even when you ask around, the people he found a way to just develop an ordinary friendship, no matter how it started, whether it was a professional relationship or a church member relationship. It just somehow found its way into just friendship, plain and simple.
Yeah, one of the elders, I think it was in his tribute, Elder Mkandawire said, he had a way of making you feel like you were his closest friend.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely the truth about him. My wife, when she heard him say that, she was like, wait, was I actually close to my friend? But he definitely had this special thing about him, about getting close to people and making them feel like, I care for you.
Genuinely so. Okay. He had this thing which he liked talking about in terms of ministry. During the men's diet, one of the things he would say is, we like to think ministry is elder sanctioned. So unless elders have established a ministry, put a structure and said, hey, this is the chairperson of YP, in our minds, we're not serving God. But because he didn't think that, he served God in so many ways across his life. What are some of the ways that you remember in which he was serving God while on this side of eternity?
Yeah, for me, the thing that really stood out was when he would come back from Cyprus for his holidays. Because what tended to happen was that he would, on Sunday, fill our car with young people as we went back home for lunch. And it was Sunday after Sunday, and in due season, we began to notice these young people's lives being transformed. So it wasn't just come home for lunch, it was during that 2 hours or 3 hours of break between our two services, spending time with them, ministering to them. And it wasn't long before it became evident that this is where his heart was, in the sort of one-on-one type of ministry. And it became so clear that the day his elder brother, Mundula, came to see me to say that he now was about to make the plunge into ministry. He had been talking about it for 8, 9 years prior to that, maybe even 10 years. But now he was saying, look, you gave me benchmarks, I've fulfilled all of them. I still think this is what God has called me to. I remember saying to him, between you and Mwansa, if one of you was to tell me about now going into ministry, who I would think would be the person. He immediately said, Mwansa. And I said, yes.
Really?
Yes. Because Mwansa was such a people's person compared to Mwindula. Yes. Mwindula has taken up, I'm an introvert, although you might not think so. But Mwansa has taken that, or rather Mwindula has a lot more of that. So he recharges better by being away from people, alone.
Yeah.
Mwansa's batteries are recharged.
By being with people.
Exactly. Yes. So in that sense, he was doing ministry unofficially. And even when the men's diet came up, at least those of us who didn't know the plans, all we noticed was, there's this thing that is happening with a lot of young adult males taking place. We don't know when it began, how it began, who began it. But before long, it was very clear that there was a central piece, and Mwansa was in it, heart and soul. Yeah.
Just when you were speaking, I was thinking, we always used to have this conversation, and I'll tell him, you know what, you would be a great preacher, but the problem is you are a joker. We laugh about it like, but one of the CABU conferences, when Shannon Hurley came, and he was like, look at that, I can actually be a preacher. And after that, that's how he started thinking about it a little bit more. Yeah, so I just remembered that.
For me, the discipleship sticks out as well. It's one of the things that we spoke about regularly, actually. When we were making our plans, we said, what is it that, to each other, what is it that attracted you to me as a partner in ministry? And I said the same to him. And the thing that stood out was discipleship. So we kept on saying, look, I was watching your life. I was watching what you were doing without anybody necessarily asking you to do what you were doing with young people. You were doing it. So I think discipleship stood out in Mwansa's life. There was many times where a guy was being discipled by me or vice versa.
Yeah.
But then we would hear that, oh, Mwansa has given advice to the guy that I'm discipling, and they are meeting regularly. And the exact opposite as well. Actually, Kombe behind the camera is one of them. They met regularly. I was the official disciple, but Mwansa was meeting with him, I think, once a month as well. So discipleship stood out. There was no program that was put in place for Mwansa to become a discipler, but he discipled, he shared his life, he brought people into his home, and they learned from him that way. Yeah.
Can you please say the question again?
So the question was, in what ways did Mwansa serve God? So this could be proper ministries like organized by the church, but also areas of service outside the regular ministries that we have at church.
I think the one that would be automatic would be discipleship, because we were doing that together. But it's, let me say, during the discipleship, it felt more than that. Like sometimes it can just feel like it's structured. Like there were, let me say, ideally we could have just sat, done the program chapter by chapter, but once I'll be like, okay, no, I'm going to Mwansa this time, let's go together, or let's go do this together and that together. And it was really pouring into my life. And I would see it in the same being done to others as well. That makes sense. So once I really care for people, and sometimes it was the way he cared for people was the way only he can do it. If that makes sense. Like sometimes it was weird, but it made sense. If that makes sense, I don't know. Yeah. So he really cared for the brethren and really wanted better for them. Wanted them to follow Christ. He really wanted them, go after this. If this is wrong, cut it out. Don't play around. Don't say this and this. At least know that you're wrong, but don't be like, no, there's a reason to it. But Mwansa was like, no, I want you to see it. It's important that you see it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Another thing that comes to mind, just going off what Ramson has said, is that Mwansa shared his resources. So in class, for example, just the fact that he had a vehicle and was heading the direction where one of our classmates was going, he would say, yeah, let's go together. This is a no-brainer. You shouldn't even be looking for transport. Another thing that he was constantly saying to us is, guys, don't hide information. Share information so that we can all benefit and pass. And I know that in the background as well, he and his wife were sharing their resources with the people around them. So that's another way in which he served God.
Yeah, maybe I could throw in two very quickly. One is the fact that he began a blog and was constantly dealing with issues that are primarily young adult issues. So it's fairly evident there that he wasn't sort of saying, okay, until KBC opens some blog, which the elders are monitoring, then we will be contributing.
Yeah.
He saw it as a channel of ministry and immediately began to do it. The other was his last form of employment as the director for the Student Labor Program, SLP, at the African Christian University. I mean, he walked up to me on one occasion and said, Dad, could you tell me what SLP is all about at the university? So I took a bit of time and basically gave him the most elementary introduction. I didn't think much about it until a few months later, I'm seeing I'm reading a statement by the Vice Chancellor of the African Christian University on the WhatsApp group for members of staff that a new member of staff has joined. And is Mr. Mwansa Mbewe. I'm thinking now, how did all this happen? And so I went to see her and asked, I said, look, I know he asked me once, but I didn't see all this happening behind the scenes. Can you explain to me? And she said to me, Mwansa made an offer to us that I could not refuse. And basically he said, I'm willing to help with the student labor program at no cost to the university whatsoever. Until such a time that the student labor program begins to make some income, then you can start paying me. Until then, I'm willing to offer my service free of charge. And she said, who does that? So that's how they took him in. And yes, in due season, the director himself stepped down, and that's how they employed him full time. Or they put him on the payroll. Prior to that, he was full time, but volunteering. He quit his job in the architectural world because, again, he saw it as a means to one-on-one disciple young people. That's what moved him.
Yeah. In terms of ministry, just to add on the last point, I feel like Mwansa built on gaps. And I think a lot of our friendship was about finding the gaps and building on those particular gaps. So everywhere where he saw a gap, he wanted to build something there. And I think that's what really drove him in terms of the discipleship. He'll just be like, look at that chap. What is he doing? What is he doing? And then the next time I see him, he's talking to this person, Yeah, so he really just built on all the gaps. And one gap for me that I remember is we were serving in senior YP. And we realized, I think at some point, Uncle George said, senior YP is for you to go out. It's not for you to feed each other. Mm-hmm. You have Sunday service and whatnot. And so we sat and we're like, so then how do we scratch where it itches for the young people? Because there are certain things we need to address that are not addressed at the pulpit level. And we can't address them at senior YP. Yeah. And that's how we started the women's and the men's diet, because we're trying to address that particular gaps. Yeah, so I think those gaps helped him also in terms of how he served God.
If I could add, the lunch, or let me say him having people over at his place with his wife, it's bringing people to your place. It's a very personal thing. And when someone's at your place, they'll see you, and when that is happening, they'll ask questions, and you can share the gospel. You can basically share your life to them. And it doesn't always have to be, okay, so this is the gospel, this is Christ, what. No, even the way he's living his life, because he's following Christ. So you could see it, You could see the way he's relating his wife, the things he's talking about, how his life is. So Mwansa was always welcoming people. And it would be very strange for someone to just come home, spend time with him, and just listen to him talking, just be with him and just walk away and be like, there's nothing I've gained, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's one thing I wanted to add on.
Yeah, he really was quite generous. I remember during the gap between me entering formal employment and finishing university, that was still just after COVID. Yeah. So I would come from my parents' place in the outskirts of Lusaka and then come for the morning service, try and figure out what I would do between services because I can't go back, and then take the evening service and go back home. Yeah. So one Sunday, Mwansa walks up to me and says, what do you do in between services? I say, figure something out until the evening. So it says, whenever you don't have plans, my house is always open. So that's how, whenever I'm not seeing anyone in particular, I'll just jump into the car. I remember once Uncle George asking me, where are you going? And I said, I'm going home. So there's a sense in which when you dissect someone's life like this, it's larger. He appears larger than life. Yeah. almost imperfect, so much so that you might want to humanize him by talking about his faults. We won't go into that because anyone who knows him will know that Mwansa had his fair share of faults.
Yeah.
But faults notwithstanding, it's still tragic to lose a life like this. Someone who had relationships, not just with us here, but with many people outside as well. So if it's that tragic, how then does the Bible say that it's still precious in the Lord's sight for someone like this to die, a Christian like this to die?
Sorry, Chilam.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I'm thinking we can get back to this question. But Mwansa and I spent a lot of time talking and praying through fruitfulness, and I know that the two of you spent a lot of time talking about fruitfulness. I think it's a way through which Mwansa served God.
Okay.
Could you just share with us his mind on being fruitful?
Oh, okay, sure. Fruitfulness. So the phrase that automatically comes to mind, I think was something he blogged about, is fruitfulness is messy.
Yeah.
So there's a way in which, because we're not out hunting to get food, or just going to ShopRite or something and getting food, we don't realize what it takes to have that food in the shops. But if you go to a farmer and you ask him, what does it take to make a cow, take a cow from birth to maturity, or to grow from the seed to a, he would tell you that he had to get his hands dirty. He would have to wake up as early as 4 a.m. to go and dig or irrigate or things like that. And that was the picture that Mwansa had of fruitfulness. We like to imagine that people who have the kind of Christians that we want around us by magic. So I think Chilambo should be here spiritually. And if I think it long enough, one day he will stumble across. Yeah. But that's far from the truth. And the fact that we've got so many post-struggling shows that we are not, that actual work needs to be put in. So in terms of fruitfulness, once I believed that you had to get your hands dirty if you're going to see any actual results, which is how come he would share even the most intimate details of his life before his discipling, with a view that, as I share this with this person and as I'm pointing them to Christ, they will grow. On the Sunday when he passed, I was chatting with a brother at UTH, and he was saying the last question I had with Mwansa, it wasn't a discipleship meeting proper, we were just chatting. And after we discussed the details of our lives, he said, you know what, between you and me, if there's someone going to heaven, it's you, because I'm a horrible human being. Now, he didn't tell what they were discussing. One can only imagine, but that level of vulnerability is the messiness that's involved in the work of discipleship. So in terms of fruitfulness, the first thing would be willing to get your hands dirty. Not sinful dirty, but just in the mess that is life to actually get results. But secondly, it's actually wanting results. Another phrase that he used to like repeating is, do you want to get the job done or do you want to look nice try? And oftentimes when he asks me that, I'm between a rock and a hard place, and I would say, look, I just want to look nice. I just want to look nice. So actually being clear, I think how he refers it is, what does victory look like in this area? I mean, you could go into, I think Ramson will probably remember this, you would go in with the most difficult situation in your life. It's messy, this one has done this to that one, this one is sinning like this. And then he would listen and he'd say, okay, so what does victory look like? What are you trying to accomplish? So that clarity in knowing what you're actually trying to produce, I think was also helpful in helping him live the fruitful life that he did. That was a good question. Does anyone else have any thoughts around fruitfulness?
Not quite. The only bit I was going to mention as a prelude to answering your next question was the fact that when Mwansa died, my first pastor picked it up because it was all over the internet. And so he called me. And as we're having the conversation, he said, look, I did not know your son.
Yeah.
I knew you had a son, but I had no idea about his influence and impact on people. But it's very clear from what I've been reading that he was impactful. Then he said, I'm wondering whether he was trying to imitate you, meaning imitate me, and then in the process bent out because, you can't imitate try and be someone when you don't have that makeup. And my answer to him was not at all. The man was his own man.
Yeah.
Yes, he saw the Lord,
Yeah.
wanted to live for the Lord.
Yeah.
Whether the father was a drunkard or not, he was gone. He wasn't sort of peeping over to say, so what is that doing that we also doing? And one of the areas is definitely what you talked about, this discipleship element. It's not my strength. You won't catch me doing all this as part of my life. But that was him. He as Jesse said, he saw the gap and just went for it. He wasn't thinking like that at all. And I think it's important to highlight that the areas of his initiatives were hardly ever areas of my own initiative. Never thought about things like that. Even, the coffee in the library. These things are quite foreign to me. But for him, that was a gap. Let's move in and do this. So I just thought I could attach it to your last question, which I think you began speaking in terms of death and so on.
Yes.
But
So
over to you.
Yeah. So the question was, he's alive, appreciated by many, family, friends, even just outsiders looking in. And to lose such a life is a tragic thing. And yet, even though it's tragic, the Bible still tells us that precious in the sight of God is the death of one such as this. So how can we reconcile those two? It's tragic on this end, but at the same time, God is calling it a precious thing.
I'll let someone else start.
Yeah.
I remember I was making my way home. This was after Mwansa passed, and I was thinking, I was like, of all the people you can take away, like why take him? Like me, I'm still here, and I know for sure the work I'm doing and the work he's doing. I'm like, if you're picking sides, just keep him,
Yeah.
So I remember I was thinking about that, and the thing I loved about Mwansa, which sometimes even now I try to find it, is Mwansa was very blunt. Mwansa was very ones and zeros, It's right, it's not. Mwansa was very, very direct. So I remember even this was after I passed. It's like if Mwansa was here and you were seeing me, maybe months have passed and I was very down, that he's gone. And I would just see him and you'd be like, you've missed the whole point. Like him telling me that because it's like, Chief, I'm in a better place, Like where I am right now, I'm in a better place, than you. So why, Because we've shared that that there's so much better things after death. And if we're mourning here, like, no, I would wish he was here. It's like saying there's so much better here right now. That makes sense. But it's like, no, the God we believe in and what we believe in, it says that there's joy in death. Like we know that, okay, he loved the Lord and he's going to a much better place. So that was one thing. So for me, that was one thing with Mwansa. It shocked me because I was I was at his place on Wednesday. We're having our discipleship meeting. That's when Friday morning, as I'm at work, I'm hearing what's happened. That's when it was just shocking, if that makes sense. But with time, honestly, it's I'm happy knowing that he's in a better place, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I can't always directly say that for many people, but with him to be like, yeah, like that's the truth, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we've spent so much time talking about how Mwansa served God. But Mwansa served God the way he did because he had a relationship with God.
Yeah.
And it's one thing that our class kept on saying. Look, we have no doubts in our minds that Mwansa is with God.
Yeah.
Mwansa is with Jesus.
Yeah.
Because his life was a testament to a life transformed by this God. So how is that precious to God? God has gotten back his person. This person served him with joy, and now this person is with the one he loved more dearly than anything else in this world. That's why the death of a Christian is precious in the eyes of God.
Oh, we are saving you as the best for last.
No, he's saving me for the best one.
One thing I remember at his funeral, from the tributes, everyone kept saying, if we had to ask Mwansa right now, like, dude, come back, he'd be like, guys, why? like you know, where he is right now is what he's been living for. You know, like he never separated his life for the future glory that God has spoken about. And I think a lot of the time at funerals, you know, people say, no, this person is in a better place, and talk about, you know, their life, they were good and whatnot. But I think from here, this is not what it's about. Yeah. There's proof, like there's so much proof that this person lived a godly life. We are not just saying just because we miss him. No, this person lived a godly life.
Yeah, thank you very much. My addition is really another aspect of the word precious. And it's to do with, it doesn't remove the tragic element, but it explains why the word precious is used. And it's, if I could use an example, you have clothes, and there are certain clothes that you don't wear anyhow. You reserve them for, let's use the phrase, state functions. Okay. Because in that sense, they are precious. And that's the way in which that word is used in Psalm 116, round about verse 15. It's basically saying that, you know, the death of a sinner, the Lord does not treat it as, you know, this is something that I sort of put aside with a lot of thought and intention and so on. It's like it's one of those things. But with the death of a saint, it's like the Lord takes that extra in terms of, here's an individual that has been useful to me in this life. So I can't just take him out. I can't just bring him home like anyone else. I bring him home knowing that this is a peculiar intention. This is a very special decision that I have made concerning this particular person. Because of the tragic nature of what's happening. It's, under normal circumstances, he would have to still be there. But because I specifically want to now bring him home, that I now take that step. It's precious in the eyes of the Lord. Yeah. And in that sense, one agrees with all of you, because as a number of people mentioned, even within the family, they were saying that it looks like it was as if Mwansa knew I've got a short life.
Yeah.
And therefore, he put into that 32 years
Yeah.
what for most of us is 65 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the Lord gave him the wisdom to fulfill literally every moment of his life. And he literally died in flight because, as Njekwa said, they were planning to together plant a church. They had already gone through interviews with the elders. The elders had already okayed the project. Of course, in the background, he was preparing in ways I didn't even know until after he had already gone to glory. In that sense, we would say it's tragic. But again, remember, the Lord knew the plans that his child had, the plans that were still going to glorify him. He still took him because for him, that moment of bringing the child home was not just any other. It was precious in his sight. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So he's much better off where he is.
Amen.
No one, if he was in his right mind, he wouldn't want to come back. Yeah, and this is something that God didn't do without much thought, because it's a precious thing. It's sparing. But we're still left on this side of eternity. And the emotions that we have, God doesn't deny them. They are real emotions. The pain of sorrow is a real thing. How does God expect us to mourn someone who we've lost? And this goes even beyond one. Anyone, perhaps someone who's watching has lost a relative or a close friend. How does God expect a Christian to process and perhaps deal with the loss of a loved one? I guess even in this sense, we've spoken about Mwansa in this way because he's a Christian. So perhaps we can talk about it from the vantage point of someone losing a Christian relative and also a non-Christian relative, because those are two different scenarios.
Yeah, let me quickly throw in something and then others can come in. I have found that grief over a Christian is better because you know that it's a goodbye in terms of a good night. See you in the morning. As I said, the moment Mwansa breathed his last. It's not a final, permanent parting of ways. We are all finally going to eternity, and it makes eternity even more precious when you know that a saint has gone ahead of us. And that's how I have felt over, a number of my fellow elders, Mr. Chibuta, Dr. Mpuka, and others that we're laboring together with, and then they were gone, looking forward to meeting again and recounting something of the labors that were here. I also want to mention the middle category, and it's burying a fruitless Christian is not nice. I've been through it with a number of our church members as well, where someone you've been talking to about biblical churchmanship, it's never taken off, and then bam, the person dies, and then I'm supposed to be preaching at the person's funeral. I found it equally difficult because you know that the person is hanging between you wicked and lazy servant, in the parable of our Lord, sort of get away from me kind of thing. Or the person arriving in heaven smelling smoke, so to speak, using the First Corinthians 3 passage, barely surviving and arriving there. So how do you then make much of the grief that is there, that the saints are going through? Of course, the non-Christian is even worse, because it's a permanent parting, and it's unimaginable the suffering that the person has already gone into, even when people are saying, may his soul rest in peace. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so we are almost out of time, so we need to land this plane. So I'll ask if there's anyone else who would like to chip in on how we can process the loss of a loved one.
Yeah, I think of the passage in Thessalonians that tells us to rejoice always. That passage is anchored in Jesus Christ. And that's how it ends. The verse ends by speaking about Jesus Christ. You have Jesus. So as a believer, you are going through these hard times, but God has given you his greatest gift as an anchor for you. So whatever it is that is happening to you is working out for your good so that Christ might be formed in you. Whatever happens here on earth, at the end of the day, you know that you stand secure because of this Jesus Christ who came, gave his life as a ransom for you, and was risen from the dead. He is risen. He is in heaven. He intercedes for you. So I'm good. I'm secure, not because of anything in myself, but because of this Jesus. So even when I go through hard times, I can have this anchor to rejoice because of everything that Jesus has done on my behalf.
Thanks, Cheko. Okay, we are almost at the end of today's episode, but just before we close, I want to suggest 2 resources that we have here. The first is a compilation of Mwansa's blog. It's called Loving God and Loving Neighbor. The mind and heart of Pastor Mbewe, of Mwansa Mbewe. Yeah, the already moved. His church flag. Yeah, of Mwansa Mbewe. And then the second is Sorrowful, Yet Always Rejoicing. This is a book it's a compilation of the devotions that Pastor Mbewe was sharing with his family during the month. It was a month, Pastor?
Yes.
Yeah, the month after they lost Mwansa. So it can help you with the last bit of today's episode of processing what it means to lose a loved one, to be sorrowful, and yet still manage to rejoice. So both of these are available in Evergreen Bookshop. We'll post links in the description of this episode so that you could see how you can access copies of them. All right, so that's been our pilot for season 3. Thank you so much for joining us, and see you next time.